Avatar and Teen Titans both have episodes that tackle discrimination. One does it well while the other does it poorly. In this video, I'll break down what went wrong and what went right. The episodes are Troq from Teen Titans and the Warriors of Kiyoshi from Avatar. Teen Titans dealt with racism, while Avatar dealt with sexism. Both were mature topics to try and teach kids about, but both were not handled equally well. The episode Jet is the gold standard for writing an antagonist that has beliefs that the writer opposes. Let's look at the key details and see how each episode did. The first is the antagonist, who represents the anti-theme beliefs, the lie, the beliefs that go against what the writer is trying to teach. Jet was treated with a lot of respect. He was competent at fighting, competent at leading, and a charismatic person in general. He was actually framed as a superior Sokka, and even the main characters preferred him over Sokka. In Troq, Warrior was the antagonist, and he was also treated with a lot of respect. He was powerful, charismatic, and all the main characters initially looked up to him. He was incredibly competent up until the climax, where he needed help. In Kiyoshi, Sokka was the thematic antagonist, but he was treated like a jerk and a joke the entire time. He's portrayed as rude to Katara, arrogant and rude towards the Kiyoshi warriors, and is easily defeated twice before his character arc. He basically has no redeeming qualities before growing. The reason the other two are better is because it doesn't come off as soapboxing. Making the character you disagree with have no redeeming traits and constantly get dunked on is very blunt and almost feels like you're creating a straw man caricature for the opposing argument, which is very bad in debates. By making the opponent have multiple redeeming traits, it's like steel manning your opponent's argument, but through writing language. You are creating the strongest version of your opponent's argument, which makes it more powerful when you eventually tear it down. So the first rule is to treat the opponent character with respect. The next part might be the toughest part to write depending on the topic. Now, instead of just presenting the opponent as somewhat likable and redeeming, you have to steelman and strengthen their argument to a degree. Like the first step, the reason this is good writing is because it builds up the strongest version of the opposing argument to effectively tear it down. I'll go through them one by one. Jet's bad belief is that it's okay to kill civilians. How can we make this argument have some kind of root in truth or ethics? The writers of this episode used logic and history. Jet's logic was that because the Fire Nation was evil, which is a fact, then the Fire civilians are also evil and can be necessary casualties of war. Additionally, he was given a sad backstory of losing his family to the nation, so logically he'd want revenge. See, at first, he just said something most people disagreed with, but then we made it palatable to a point where someone could say, he has a point. Warrior's bad idea was that Tamaranians were a useless race that deserved to be mistreated. Here, they did not strengthen Warrior's argument, but I can let it slide due to the metaphor. In real life, the strongest argument I can think of for racism is scientific racism, where certain races are genetically superior. But even racism's strongest argument is objectively unscientific, so it's not that strong of an argument. Races don't even actually exist and are a social construct, which is the reason why I'm fine with Teen Titans not even touching this. The show could have created a scientific argument since they were dealing with aliens, but it was a metaphor for real-life races, which have no scientific base. Therefore, it's fine for the aliens in the show to have no scientific base for discrimination. Finally, Sokka. His specific bad beliefs regarding sexism are that girls are better at knitting and guys are better at hunting and fighting. There's already a problem here. They wanted to show that sexism is bad, which is an honorable idea, but their execution was poor. As offensive as it may feel, Sokka's beliefs are technically correct. On average, men are better at fighting and hunting than women due to their biological differences. I don't know about knitting, but if women were better, it'd be due to cultural history, which would still make it a fact, just not a biological one. So instead of giving Sokka a belief that is actually wrong, like men are always better at everything than women, they had him state pretty observable facts and then treated him like a villain. Instead of giving him a bad belief, they gave him a regular belief, but made him a jerk about it. The story's unwillingness to even acknowledge that Sokka might have a point makes the writing feel disingenuous. Here's a better idea. If they wanted to show that sexism was bad, but they wanted to strengthen Sokka's position before taking it down, it would have been easy. What is a logical reason for discrimination based on sex? Combat. If on average, men are stronger and faster than women, then Sokka would have a point if he thought that women should never fight. This is close to what's already there, but let's go deeper and add to his reason. Jet's family dying and his casualty reasoning made his side more empathetic. We can do the same for Sokka by making his belief come from a place of wanting to protect women, like Katara and Suki. Now, we've steelmanned his argument and can take it down in the future. Now, let's take a look at actions. I'll start with Avatar. Let's look at the worst actions the two did based on their beliefs. Jet blew up the dam, Sokka flexed on the warriors. When Jet did his worst action due to his beliefs, he still morally had a point. Blowing up the dam would have killed evil Fire Nation soldiers. It just would have also killed innocent people. But if you're consequentialist, you believe that he made the morally right choice. Viewers could walk away still agreeing with Jet. When Sokka did his worst action, he was purely in the wrong. There was no honorable, justifiable motive behind it. He was just being rude. Most reasonable viewers wouldn't walk away saying Sokka was in the right for trying to dominate the girls. This is another example of Jet being treated with respect, and Sokka not. But I'll throw in Valor too. Due to his racism, he made Starfire move the minefield, a dangerous task. But that wasn't the end of it. He made her do the task because Tamaranians could withstand space. Technically he could do it too, but he was the only one who could steer the ship, so he had to stay inside. The scientific logic made sense, but his approach and lack of care for her safety was what made it wrong. Just like with Jet, in this worst action, the viewer could walk away saying, you know, he had a point. You could not say that with Sokka. The last step is handling the defeat properly. Jet's beliefs were defeated through the context of the story. In the context, the civilians really were innocent, so killing them was wrong. In a more pessimistic, consequentialist story, they could have made it so that the civilians really were in cahoots with their nation and were okay with the sins that they committed, despite not committing them themselves. That context could make Jet's argument right. The argument is in the state of limbo until you apply context to it. I could argue the same thing for Valor. If the context was that Tamaranians actually had inferior genetics, like they were weaker, slower, and less smart, then that context could frame Valor's arguments as right. But in the context that we got, none of that was present, so his racism was purely illogical. Interestingly enough, even when Jet and Val lose, they don't change their beliefs. They stick to their guns, and the story implicitly teaches us that you can't change everyone. It's very mature. Sokka didn't get that grace. He was constantly humiliated throughout the episode and had to remove his toxic beliefs, unlike Jet and Val. He was written uncharismatically. Even when he had reasonable arguments, they were treated like hate speech. There was no context to change. But what about my rewrite? Here, Sokka believes that women should never fight. In a negative context, women could be objectively weaker, slower, and less magically potent, making him right. But in the world of Avatar, there doesn't seem to be any skill gap between men and women, so that context would make Sokka wrong. To further rewrite Sokka, he wouldn't be a jerk about his beliefs. He would still have his same likable self and would have moments where he has a point. He believes that women will get hurt fighting men, but in this specific episode, the Kiyoshi warriors are strong enough to handle male disposable fire soldiers. Then Sokka apologizes, changes his beliefs, and learns from them. The overall conclusion is that just because science has averages doesn't mean that there aren't women that can hold their own in a fight. That's how you avoid soapboxing. So here is how you write an effective antagonist with beliefs that go against what you're trying to highlight. Make the antagonist likable and competent. Make their argument as strong as possible, given there is no context. Make them have a point in their actions. Finally, defeat them with the context of your story that makes their beliefs wrong. Based on these traits, Jet and Valor were excellent, but the Kiyoshi episode was written horribly.